Hello, folks. Well, this is Miguel from Embargo Man. Now, this topic would be very sincere. You hear, you just seen the title. Why? You have to be very concerned. All right. First of all, this is during 2020. All right. This is like I cannot agree with a bunch of guys, a bunch of asshole cops. Try to just take a man, choke them with the knee. All right. So then you have this BLM movement. I know, I understand. I'm just trying to say that I'm not gonna say I'm gonna isolate other people. It's not to be tolerated to hate. I mean, you want to hate others, right? Look, this is what it is. That regardless of who is going to be hated, is always to be focused hatred towards Caucasians, hatred towards white people, right? Why? Because this is just one thing, COVID-19 and all that stuff, right? This type of thing that you wonder why is happening. Like, look at this. After all this, we almost had, or what people have a chance to just press a button to send a nuclear weapon. All it is to find the best way to attack Islamist extremist group in Africa by using a nuclear weapon. Thank God this didn't happen. So, point blank, it is that now that we have chosen towards, okay, and this is not why towards hate, or why they don't have some hashtag that says stop black hate, right? Because what it is that if your lives, I mean human life, lives matter, all right? Human lives, I don't care what they are, all right? So then this is a spread to saying, okay, this is just a wrong form to saying, okay, initials. I'm just saying the initials BLM. This is just the wrong form to say stop black hate. Besides that, let's go back towards World War II, or back to when they have bringing. I mean, Asian hate did exist. I mean, this is not just an American thing, but people of Asian descent were like, mistreating Chinese railroad workers. They might have Koreans too in there too. But then World War II came along, and then all this anti-Japan propaganda, Japanese Americans being discriminated. Well, the problem with that is that the Japanese being discriminated, people of Japanese descent being discriminated, and even here in the United States during World War II, is because of this war. And why the hell it is Pearl Harbor happens, and there is no excuse to just blame people, to just send a plane to drop some bombs. All right, it is. I saw this. It is very saddened. What is the most saddened part is people take their pride and joy to say that their own people are very are saints, or something like that, saying that they're saints or something like that. Putting this way, that's saying, oh yeah, we don't hurt a fly or whatever. This is just they just others blame it. You know what? This is where you get towards, I'll tell you, a group of people in this paradox box. You have this Pandora box now because out of all the Asian groups, that I might say, you have the Chinese, you have the Koreans, the Japanese. More of saying, I'm not saying I hate all Asians. Guess what? I love them. They got really beautiful women though, but hey, you look to these aspects of all things related towards hate. I mean, this type of hate nowadays, you have it all started this time about blaming Chinese people to bring the COVID-19 to the world. And then this is kind of nonsense because then canceling the Hong Kong marathon in the beginning of the pandemic and all this stuff. It's kind of like going to twist in a way people beating up people of Asian descent, and this happening in the United States. But it just didn't happen in the United States. It happened in France. Like the freaking setup of criticizing COVID and all that stuff, and this is kind of ridiculous, right? This is kind of ridiculous because I mean, hate, hate. Look, what happened now? They could have love could conquer everything. Love always conquers over hate. Is that to pick and choose who to hate or to just live in right here in this area of a bunch of confusion. All right, so this is very confused. This is very confused. So where do all the hate begins? Wait, well, hate started as it is, probably in the Roman era, or probably it's not an American thing. This happened worldwide, even in Europe, even in Europe. So it is like where would the hatred comes from? All right, so put it in the Pandora box of all things settled because Japanese, well, people of the Japanese background were be hated, and then hated. I mean hated, and like not just like during World War II, but at one time during those times in World War II, they would have been criticized of this just because a few assholes were just the capture of Chinese and Korean women. Yeah, capture of Asian comfort women, most likely Chinese and Koreans, get to explain all this of complaining about all this settling of statues that represent the victims who are you know committed who are committed or has been prosecuted towards war crimes. What? To have these statues commemorate them, the girl of peace or whatever. Actually, this is more like everybody saying, okay, let's blame Japanese folks, and let me tell you what, Korea back then was saying, put it that way. Korea was Japan's Puerto Rico, right? So this it is Koreans were involved doing the same thing, raping their own women. They just blame they just blame it on the Japanese folks. I mean, the Japanese personnel actually people of Japan, Japanese military personnel who were non-Korean or something like that. Yeah, getting the blame on them is because what they're trying to do is to spread hatred. Hatred to one group of people. Now divided. It's like saying this is ridiculous. This is kind of ridiculous. With the German Nazi would say, or the neo-Nazi, those bunch of assholes from back in World War II, say that no, it didn't, the Holocaust didn't happen. Well, it did happen. They realized they screwed up. So what would happen to this kind of hatred is that, let me tell you what, hate is a poison. Hate is a poison for the mind. The mind give you the will be poisoned with hate. Hate would, ruins a person's reputation, poisoning people's minds. And this is regardless on why do set up with things like that. Look, this is one time to having scares of having, white Europeans or the Caucasians enslaving Africans or enslaving black people, and then like the sin about white Americans and saying that, this kind of horror stories and how would, blacks be enslaved even for sexual slavery done by the Confederates back then. Like this is like kind of a similar story, and this is the reason why this type of poison of the mind will let women women to marry the men of those people that were oppressed back then, or I mean, American white women deciding to marry American black men because their mind are poisoned, saying that, oh, white American men are assholes, because that is BS, and that is the poison of the mind interacting to their heads, thinking this is it. This is the poison that people would spread in the mind. I mean, I'm just saying, poison of the mind, that's hatred. You go into self hate, and saying, oh, look, I'm not gonna marry them because in our past, these guys raped or did horrible things to those people, right? So to those certain group of people, so this is just the mind poison that it's stuck to this day. And what is the force of interracial marriages and all that stuff? This is not just to have love where the heart follows. This is to poison the mind in this utopia stage to think that people from a certain group would just, vandalize or ruin the lives of people of this other group. And so they just go and change, and they intercultural marriages and all that stuff. This is what's gonna happen. I don't know if it's common for Japanese women looking for marry a Korean spouse because of the mind poison from back in the day of World War II, or finding Chinese men or whatever. This is just a little slide of saying, oh yeah, look at what the Japanese soldiers did in World War II, right? That's hatred. That's mind poison. That's poisoning the mind to let women marry men of the people who are the group to be the ones to be oppressed. So this is where is going on right there. So what is going on right there, that this hatred, or that this tolerance to just thinking that the only victims, that the only that the only victims to being hated on are not black people, are not Asians, are not even Japanese folks. Yeah, Japanese would fall in that category, because I mean, the Koreans are the ones involved to this other form of hatred. Would be that, put it this way, if if you have a bunch of I'm just saying, a bunch of men, or saying to poison the minds, or like saying, or like saying the haters, like saying, I'm going hatred to Chinese people because of COVID, because they brought COVID. That's BS. That is BS. I mean, BS towards what? It's called racial discrimination, racial hatred, poisoning the minds. But then, what would that be? What would it be is more intercultural relationships, but this time would be Caucasians marrying Asians, but it always be involved with the women. Why would be always be involved with women? It's because to poison the minds is just let women choose to think that their own men of their own kind are nothing but assholes, right? That's the poison of the mind, to ruin the reputation, maybe even start a cry, you know? Starting a cry out of something, oh shoot, is just given a plain example of this mind poison. Japanese woman thinking, okay, I don't know if I could marry my own kind, or something like that. This is what the Japanese woman's state of mind says. Oh, but they marry. Oh, but they're a bunch of assholes. They look what they did to these poor Korean women. I'm just gonna go flew to Korea to find Prince Charming over there, because Japanese men are assholes. That's the mind poison that Koreans done, and this is the kind of thing. What it is like, put it that way. Everybody is guilty. The thing of the whites mistreating blacks is all true, but then with this other one about Korean women being raped by Japanese men, or Chinese women being raped by Japanese men. Some are true, some is BS. But then they need to just say, most likely Korean, say that if they do rape their own women, they have to blame on the Japanese folks, right? They need to have somebody to blame to make them look good. So they do the sin, they blame it on others, and then they wash their hands and says, you know what? I'm not involved I'm not involved with them. I am with stupid. I didn't do any harm, right? So, one YouTuber, this is a woman YouTuber, who has said about this thing going on, about this type of brainwashing, and I would say whoever opened people's minds, well, she already opened my mind at this time, is I am looking forward to protect one YouTuber from one certain country about the reputation of the lies. Of the lies would be starting to spread. I mean, it's not just lies, but untold truths that were like the same what American black people has done to poison the minds. Most likely men saying, "Oh, look what these white Americans has done. The KKK and all these people." And then it's not just blaming a few people who are assholes. They were saying they were having the white American women deciding to marry black men. I mean, black American men to just got poisoned in their minds that they're saying all white American men are assholes. I mean, it's going to happen with another country. And then I would say, thank you, Random Yoko. Why? Because you know this, and then when you have to update the song, is that when we see this kind of vandalism happening in another country, so I would say this, Yoko, Random Yoko, the Comfort Women song. The Comfort Women song is just what you spread, what you say on your mind, saying about what what Korean prostitutes and become going to say, okay, they got raped by Japanese soldiers or they got raped by others or whatever it is to the point where it goes to the beginning. The beginning is not to spread, it's not to say spread hatred towards Asians, but towards the same group of people hating each other, right? If you hate each other, and then this is where you could settle the beef. Two, you know, two rock islands within the Sea of Japan or East Sea, you can call it Line Court Rocks, Takashima or Dokdo, whoever side are you been known to be called, just called it Line Court Rocks. Then now going towards the Korean women or Korean prostitutes, but saying, yes, I know that they have been fed up in 2004, as your song has said, Random Yoko. You said it loud and clear. They were fed up and they went to other countries to do the same thing. In America, they got caught, but then what would happen at this time of age? Well, the poisoned mind will go to saying, have you ever seen Austin Powers Gold Member, when Gold Member is some ruthless evil Dutch guy and something like that, and it says, and Miguel Powers says he cannot stand the Dutch. He say he's a Dutch hater. I mean, in that part is the scene where you view the movie. You have to see him as a Korean prostitute. One of them Korean prostitutes begin a protesting in Amsterdam, saying they got raped by white Dutchmen. All right, so that means that and when this they begin to just vandalize and throw rocks, or say if there says the vandalism in Amsterdam happens, what that means. That the poison of the minds would say you have Dutch tourists, most likely females, going to South Korea to look for a soulmate, only to have their own minds poisoned the same way, but then everybody believes it, even the asshole, the asshole who ripped the Filipino flag named Hitler would be more loved than hated because he followed that. And then this is what it is that, yeah, Dutch female tourists going to South Korea to marry a Korean man because they think their own men are assholes, right? Because they got mind poison. Hate is a mind poison, man. I mean, you look towards mind poison, you know this it's already been spreading. I mean, this hate is mind poison. I mean, look, if you want to blame people, if who you want to blame doesn't matter. White, black, yellow, Japanese, Asian, non Asian, European, whoever, they rape. They rape women, they do horrible things, they enslave people and do whatever they please within their evil minds. And then you have to pick and choose who to go on the blame game, spreading the poison in their minds, just in their little minds, to think, oh, these certain people are assholes. They did this to those people. I'm gonna marry one of them. And that's what women being poisoned their minds of, yeah, look at this. About not just interracial marriages or intercultural marriages, but the result of people of mixed marriages or mixed children due to poison the minds of people towards hatred of their own kind. Just settle in. Look, you guys screw up. We all screw up. Human beings screw up at all. Why? Because they want to fuel people with this poison. Hate is a poison. It is a great sin. I know, because let me tell you about it. By the time this video ends, I would say thank you, Random Yoko, to warn people and to warn me and to open my eyes what's gonna be in the future. Why? Because it is not Asian hate. I mean, I love Asians. It is not either of people going to say, oh, hate black people. I don't hate them. I don't hate people at all. I don't mind if they're black, white, Japanese, Chinese, whatever. What I said is I love all people. But what I don't tolerate is hate and poisoning people's minds to go and switch and to have these interracial, intercultural, interracial relationships not going towards love, but going this intolerance of poisoning the minds of people, saying, okay, these people are assholes, most likely affecting women. Why? Because it's very vulnerable. It's very, very vulnerable to feed this poison this poison, I mean, would have settled in to just thinking it is the same poison that would have it. Even Martin Luther King was says, "Love everyone." I mean, he does wanted to have everyone get together, but this poison for some people who are just BLM or the Black Panthers, or that you have that same poison that you have white American women thinking that black thinking that they're going to marry a black American men because their minds will be thinking, oh, look at this. White American men are assholes, right? And it's the same poison that would have possibility to thinking of Japanese women thinking, oh, look, Japanese men are assholes. I'm gonna go marry a Korean guy because of this. Or the same thing nowadays in a wider brand, everybody jumping towards that bandwagon of all things, being to join the so-called oppressed, or sometimes lying on what would be. Oh, look, you seen the Amsterdam vandalism or something like that, Korean women breaking windows in the whorehouses, and then you have white Dutch women thinking, you know what? I'm not gonna marry those type of men, my own kind. I'm going to South Korea and find Prince Charming because the true Prince Charming are in South Korea because white Dutch men are assholes. Look what they have done to these women and why they protest. That's the kind of poison that you just fed up. Fed up. I mean, love you all people. I mean, look at this. You want to just jump on the bandwagon, all right? Hatred is hatred. I don't care if they're white. I don't care if they're Japanese or whatever. Spreading hatred towards people only to just saying, poisoning women's minds to say, look, these type of people are assholes. I'm not gonna marry my own kind. I'm going to flee to South Korea. I am going to go to a black neighborhood to look to find a boyfriend. That's nonsense. That's BS. That's the kind of thing that I won't, or nobody could tolerate this kind of behavior, poisoning the minds, self hatred, hating their own self just because of thinking, look, they poisoning the minds. All right, so hey, I'm up to your jazz music, rap music, whatever. I mean, it is to support the cause. I mean, just because a bunch of assholes in the past doesn't make people to hate white people. Just because. What is poisoning the minds of saying, oh, you know what? You know what? You guys are assholes. I'm gonna go look for a black boyfriend. No, it is like just saying, follow the heart. Love is something to say, or put it this way to say, look, in that case, saying, oh, you know what? I'm gonna fly to South Korea to find a Korean boyfriend because Japanese, look what they have done back in World War II. Well, that kind of nonsense, even though if it's not that common to be happening, but that's it. These are the real true haters. I mean, I'm not saying I'm gonna hate on Koreans, but then what would be is that like from World War II to whatever it is, slide, 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 man. No, Japanese are they're gonna work things out, but then you said, "Oh, look, when there are a bunch of people or just Korean prostitutes protesting and vandalizing, breaking windows of whorehouses, and say to Dutch women, white Dutch women, saying, you know what? I'm going to fly to South Korea because these pimps of my own kind are a bunch of assholes." And then everybody else believes in the Kool Aid, drinks the Kool Aid, poison the minds of everybody else, let everybody else go and flee to South Korea to find a boyfriend because of, you know what, a bunch of, just because of pimps who are assholes, white pimps who are actual assholes, working or managing or beating up Korean prostitutes in Amsterdam, said so. Like, you follow, I go along with them, right? So this is just poisoning the minds of white women, and this is like white hatred. I mean, this kind of hate needs to stop. Why it needs to stop? Because not all white people are a bunch of assholes. Not all Caucasians are assholes, all right? But let me tell you something. And they'll only have a few people who are just saying, look, I don't deal with that. I don't mess around with that. And just as guys who gonna be struggling so hard, what they gonna do? Jump on the bandwagon. Probably you have white Dutch males going to Japan while their own females are going to South Korea for a husband. All because there's something in common with all this BS saying that, oh, certain people, certain group of this certain nation are assholes. So this is not what it is, man. What is going on is you cannot stop hate with more hate. The only thing you could stop hate is with love. Is that who gives a damn? We all make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. Then settle this all aside, and the past is the past. That's it. The past is the past, man, because you look towards the past. Asian hate, Chinese slaves in the world, Chinese slaves in the railroads. Well, that's it. That's over. Look towards other type of hate towards I mean, slavery of white Europeans enslaving blacks, going to Africa, bringing them to the New World, and treat them like crap, treat them like garbage. Understandable, understandable, but then doesn't mean to twist things around, and what goes around comes around. Look, these people who are part of an oppressed group and marrying the women of those who were the slaveholders and something like that, and hey, saying, oh, my own kind have men that are assholes, kind of thing. That is not tolerated. Or This time, World War II. All right. And then we probably have women, American women marrying Japanese, white American women marrying Japanese Americans. All right. So, I mean, the atomic bomb, that might be a possibility, but just let that thing slide around because now towards that when this thing with this thing around that's going what's going on that people would hide their own things and then they just saying I'm gonna blame with them. There's a like you're the ones being stupid enough to saying that if you did something wrong and you blame it on others just because you want to look good, then look at that, and then you want to spread hate. Yeah. And then you have the same thing as saying, oh, shoot, the same thing you could poison women's minds saying, oh, I'm not going to marry Japanese men. They're assholes, whatever it is. Then all of this slide, that's not like very effective that much. But then you have COVID 19, the spread of, blaming Chinese folks for bringing COVID to the world, and then after that, Korean whores, vandalism in Holland, having saying that this kind of protest saying, okay, poison in the minds, poison. This is all of you Korean folks. I'm not gonna blame you, but I don't tolerate poison in the minds of everybody else to blame others for the doings because a few assholes rape your own women to have a bunch of Dutch females going to South Korea looking for a soulmate, thinking that their own men are a bunch of assholes because what they have done to Korean women within their own country. So I cannot tolerate that kind of BS because hate is poison for the mind. Hatred is the poison of the mind, could ruin people's reputation, and it could even affect not just guys being guilt and saying, "Oh, I cannot find a girlfriend because they looking for this type of guys," or saying women says, "Okay, I'm gonna go to South Korea because men within my own country are a bunch of assholes and look what they did to their own women. I mean, to the Korean women, right? That is not tolerated because what I'm saying is hate is a mind poison. I mean, I'm just saying not just to spread hate to other groups of people. I'm not saying to just love one type of people. I'm just saying love everyone the same and stop the poisoning of white hatred. What would be done by a bunch of Korean prostitutes. RandomYoko's right. Of Korean prostitutes vandalizing the red light district of Amsterdam, or you're saying that the Japanese would side it and saying, okay, why do Dutch males are going to Japan anyway? For the same reason to saying people who are blamed for a bunch of assholes are getting married to the women of another group being blamed by a bunch of assholes back in World War II. That's it. And that's what I said. One thing, thanks for watching. If you like this video, Press the bell button. I need subscribers. People need to get informed. People need to get informed. I'm not preaching hatred to anybody. I'm just saying to stop hatred to one group of people being isolated, gonna mean even being tossed around, even towards Korean folks, tossing them with the Japanese folks. Then that's it. That's all I have to say. Stop hatred, hatred. Yeah, you could stop Korean hate. You could keep loving black people, but I cannot tolerate hating on white people. That's it. Hate is poison. Goodbye. Peace out.